What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Trust Your Board podcast. My name is Stephen Wright, joined by Mr. William Monroe. Will, how you doing?
Steve, I am doing, I want to say great because we just went through our rookie draft, had a lot of movement, and obviously it's always fun watching the drafts, and being a part of the draft, but a little bit of a letdown now that, we're done my two rookie drafts and your one rookie draft, and now it's just mock drafts until draft season. So we've got a few months of a little bit of a lull until training camp picks up.
Yeah, that's the worst part about Dynasty is you don't do anything for months. Everyone's convinced themselves they're a contender. They don't want to make the trades, and you just kind of sit back for a while. So, it's definitely a bit of a lull. But yeah, it was a fun weekend going through the draft and having everything play out. I don't think anything that surprising, but we'll be going over our draft today, pick by pick, so we could see how things fell. I'm looking at the board. There's nothing that jumps out at me as being a surprise. What about you?
Yeah, maybe like slight movements, like, a pick or two where, one guy is assumed, but I don't think anything was super, super reached. Maybe a couple guys toward the end of the second round, third round, but for the first 18 picks, I feel like it's fairly consensus.
Yeah, and that's tends to be what happens anyway, right? People start taking who they like.
Yeah, you don't want to risk it too much with the earlier picks.
We might have got lucky with Strong there at the end of the third. I feel like he should have been higher up in the third.
Yeah, spoiler.
Yeah, spoiler. And then Zamir White, I feel like is more back end second than the 303. But other than that, yeah, I mean, and Mechie too. Mechie, I think, typically what I've seen has been mid-second. Fell to 301. I don't know. They're probably not big enough gaps to say it's like a crazy outlier or anything. Just interesting little tidbits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. I think overall it was a good draft, and we did some work here. As we'll get into, we'll kind of paint the picture of what our team looked like pre-draft. We actually didn't have any picks in this draft, and slight spoiler alert, we come away with 5 total picks. So definitely had a few pre-draft trades and a few mid-draft trades that we'll be able to highlight here for you. And then we'll kind of go through pick by pick. So it'll kind of be like a rookie mock, but maybe trying to slightly paint the picture of what we were looking at as we made the picks, and then what we think some of these teams were looking at as they made picks and traded picks.
Yeah, so I guess start with the pre-draft trades. Does that sound fair to you?
Yeah. I'll try. I'm pulling up the roster here to kind of reverse engineer what we had coming into it. So our team was fairly top heavy. We've been in the playoffs each of the first 4 years so far. I think we were first round out the first 2 years. We were runners up the third year, and then this year we were lost in the semifinals. So been a playoff team, and if made some moves to get some rookie picks and then make some moves to really build our team up here. But coming into it, I think our biggest flaw was depth and quarterback, right?
Yeah, so we had we were riding Tannehill. And we had Trevor Lawrence as our hopeful, it's still hopeful guy to kind of ascend. And then I believe the only other one we had on the roster at the time was Mayfield. We had some people we shuffled around. We had Big Ben for a hot minute. We traded. We had Winston for a little while. We traded Bridgewater. We cycled through some of the lower end guys, but Tannehill, Baker, and Lawrence were our 3. So I think most people could see why that would be a problem.
Yeah.
Going into this year, right?
Going into the initial draft. Guess that would have been 2017-ish, right? 5 years. We were on the Baker hype train and missed out on a couple of his quarterback classmates. Lamar Jackson, I think, is the big one that we're going back to it.
Josh Allen.
Josh, was he in that? Yeah, he was in that one as well.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, Lamar
was
end of the
I think
draft, or the end of the
yeah,
first
he
round.
was cheaper.
Yeah, he was the one I think we had an opportunity to get. When we were, because we waited on quarterback a bit there, and as you mentioned, a couple of the other older guys that we had.
Yeah, I forget Darnold was in that class, and there was one other one, I think. Was Rosen in that class? I don't think so.
Might have
It
been.
actually might have been Josh
Was he?
Rosen.
Yeah. Oh, because I think he was in the Kyler class. No, because they're on the same team. Yeah, he must have been
Same
there
team.
because Baker was the first pick of that draft.
Yeah, it was 5. So it was Baker, Rosen, Allen, Lamar, Darnold.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that tracks.
Wow. Wow, that's something else. But yeah, that's our quarterback situation. So that was kind of goal. I wouldn't say goal number 1, but a priority to find a quarterback somewhere to hold us over for, whether it be
Yes.
5 years, 1 year, 10 years,
And
like whatever it may be.
that looks fairly bleak, but we did have a pretty solid roster outside of that. So we have Jonathan Taylor, Najee Harris, and Josh Jacobs, with some just kind of veteran running backs, Mark Ingram, James White, Mike Davis. Did we have him or did we acquire him?
Yeah.
We had him as well.
Traded for him in the middle of the year.
Yeah, just as like a depth piece. So we had some decent depth there. Receiver, we were pretty deep as well. Tariq Hill, Keenan Allen, Mike Evans, kind of our big 3. Jarvis Landry, good depth guy, and then Elijah Moore was kind of our lone young, kind of up and coming guy. Josh Palmer, Amari Rogers were a couple of other ones. Cole Beasley, yeah.
In the years past.
Yeah, well. So exactly. Good depth pieces for the receiving core. So receiving core is pretty good, but getting older, so getting younger was definitely a focus that we had coming into this. And then tight end, we're pretty set with Mark Andrews and Dan Arnold, our backup with some depth pieces, and Brevin Jordan and Adam Troutman. So it kind of paints like the overall picture of what the team looked like. Pretty top heavy, some decent depth, but older depth. So we were looking to get younger, but trying not to rebuild, right? So it's kind of a tightrope to walk. You have Najee Harris, you have JT, who are worth a ton, but you trade them and you're probably taking a slight step back, especially with like the age that we have, right? If you have a younger team and you're trading one of them and getting some younger running backs back, you maybe can build for the future. But we're looking to, at least make one more run here. I think a lot of people are looking at maybe next year or the year after is kind of that prime time to sell Taylor and maybe even Najee as well. Najee's a little older too. So we're looking, maybe at least one more year with them and then, considering it from there. But really looking to get a little bit younger, add some depth, because we are pretty top heavy going into another contending year.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that that brings us to our first trade of the year.
Yeah, the big flaw that you alluded to early on.
Yeah, so actually we made the
to get to we were looking to pick up a quarterback, right?
We didn't I forgot
have any draft capital either. So we had 23 picks and 24 picks. I want to say we had almost all of them going into it, but we didn't have any picks this year.
Yeah, we were missing something, a second for 2023. It's crazy. It's only 2 weeks ago. I forgot the order of operations. So we've been looking for a quarterback. Failed to really find anything that was what we deemed a decent price. So we turned to Tom Brady. The asking price was basically a mid to late second. We didn't have or next year. Right. Yeah. So we turned our heads to how do we get some picks or at least a second? We tried a few different things, primarily around Josh Jacobs originally. Yeah. People were just worried about him in general, the option not getting picked up, which is it's fair. So we turned to another target of ours, which was Mike Evans, and our worry about him in a post Brady world. And he's not old, but he's not young anymore either.
Yeah, right? And it's tough because he's been like one of the kind of, people would say the offensive line is kind of the unsung heroes of football. He seems like he might be the unsung hero of fantasy because he has just been the model of consistency. I want to say it's either touchdowns or 1,000 yards, but like he's either set a record or tied a record.
7 years in a row or something.
Yeah, since his debut, every single season hitting 1,000 yards. So, a few of them were without Brady. Obviously, Jameis was there for a while. did he have a different quarterback between Jameis and Brady, or did they jump right to Brady? I think
They jumped right to Brady.
Yeah, so probably 4 to 5 years of Jameis, and then here 2 years of Brady, going into his third year, right? Yeah. So tough to get rid of him, but packaging the two of them together was going to allow us to get some crucial picks back.
Yeah, so what we ended up getting back was the 104, the 204, and a 2023 second round pick from a team who has historically been bad, might be a little bit better this year. So
expecting
I can't see being a late second.
Probably
probably early to mid somewhere. Yeah, It's hard to say,
but definitely getting some draft capital back, which is huge, right? And we're thinking we can turn that second round pick into a quarterback, as we've already had some preliminary talks. But getting that early first is going to give us a shot at getting a second young receiver to build, to build around and get some depth there. Or possibly a running back if we can get one of those top two guys in Breece Hall, which obviously was very, very unlikely, or Kenneth Walker to fall to 4. That would give us another young running back to add to that stable as well.
Yeah. So we had a lot of options. At the end of the day, I don't think we were in love with the idea of moving the 204 for Brady.
Yeah.
It's a little bit higher of a pick than we wanted to, but we were just squeezed at the end of the day. So the very next
day,
we pulled the trigger.
Yeah, looking to get that quarterback to really solidify the roster.
Yeah. So the next day, 204 for Brady and the 311. We got something back, even if it is a dart throw. A dart throw that I think we liked, but still added Tom Brady. So that'll at least push us off a year of needing to deal with this. In an ideal world, Trevor Lawrence starts excelling. Baker finds a new team and is decent. Or maybe Tannehill, a lot of people have written Tannehill off because, Malik's there and they traded AJ Brown, but Treylon Burks hits it off, and Tannehill, I'm pretty sure he's stuck in his contract for 2 years, and Malik doesn't have a ton of draft capital, so realistically he could still be around.
So he's a solid. I think what our goal is I think going into the NFL draft, we were high on Trevor Lawrence, and a lot of people, I think, we saw him early on here, look okay, but not particularly great. This is year 2, I believe. Yeah, because it was him and Najee were our first round picks last year. Eagles fan here, maybe a little biased, but I, would have rather kept Doug Peterson than Carson Wentz. I think a lot, looking back in hindsight, that probably would have been a better idea. Keep possibly Nick Foles. Who knows what would happen there? But all that to say, I think that Doug Peterson is a good head coach. And while the Jacksonville Jaguars have traditionally been a bad organization, and the NFL is one of those one league that I feel like you do see these bad organizations sometimes stay bad. We see the Jets, got a lot of talent this year. Hopefully they put it together, but they've just consistently been bad. The Lions, they're just teams that have a little spike, but have not been able to have sustained success, and have been really a tough place for fantasy, for players to be fantasy relevant. So I think that's another thing that's really, in the community at least, weighing down, I almost said Ryan Tannehill, Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, with that said, Doug Peterson's a good coach, obviously. But any coach would have been an upgrade over Urban Meyer.
You just didn't want to be there, apparently.
Absolutely. So
the idea,
turn it around.
Exactly. The idea is, buy Trevor Lawrence another year to develop here. You've got Brady as your QB1, Ryan Tannehill as your backup, and then in a perfect world, Trevor Lawrence steps forward and looks like an elite player, and you have some flexibility. Maybe you can trade Brady for a second round pick next year. Maybe you want to keep Brady and Lawrence because Lawrence looks good but not great, and you can try to get something for Tannehill. So you got some flexibility there, but we're really just kind of getting, barring Brady falling off a cliff here, and then it happens when players get older. Barring anything crazy happening with Brady, we think we have a guy that can at least help us contend here in 2022.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that sets the stage there, Will. We have
Yeah.
the 104, the 311. We got our quarterback.
Yes.
And
So we had a couple of pre-draft trades. I'll just kind of run through quick just to kind of paint the picture of what the league's doing here. The team that we were looking to trade for quarterbacks that had Allen and that had Herbert made a move to pick up Robert Woods, basically trading the 207 in this year's draft to move down to the 304 and acquire Robert Woods. I think that was a pretty good trade. Just dropping down 7 picks and getting what I think is a decent depth wide receiver. You have him as your third or fourth receiver. It's pretty solid. I think a lot of targets to soak up there.
yeah, even if he is done, because he's not at a great young age anymore, and he is coming off an injury and with a new team, with maybe some quarterback controversy. If Tannehill starts and sucks, maybe they do turn to Malik at some point. So, like a lot of things could go wrong for Woods. But even if that happens, you didn't give up a ton of draft capital. Like you said, you moved down 6 or 7 spots. It's not the end of the world. So it's a good roll of dice.
Yeah. 2 more trades here. Same team involved actually in a couple of these. One very minor, one pretty major, I'd say, just pick wise and player wise. Same team there that acquired Woods in the 304 ends up, trading. He had a bunch of 4th round picks, so traded the 406, 411, and 412 in this year's draft to one of the co-commissioners, Bird, for a 23 and 24 fourth. So just showing that, that team didn't really value the depth of this year's draft, but wanted to get some future capital for him. So a bunch of 4th round picks there in that trade. More on the minor side, but a major one that happened, I believe, the morning of the draft, just before it started. Same team there that acquired the 406, 411, and 412. Also, I don't think he had very many picks. He traded James Conner, Hunter Renfrow, the 107, the 406, and his 2024 second round pick for Denzel Mims, Jalen Reagor, so taking some shots on some receivers that haven't really panned out just yet. The 102, the 202, and the 307. So getting, jumping up primarily there from the 107 to the 102, but also getting to acquire the 202 as well. Trading away a future second, and then Hunter Renfrow, pretty solid depth receiver. James Conner, who looks to be, maybe the next 1 to 2 years, pretty relevant, but could be toward the end of his life, his fantasy relevant life.
Yeah, for sure. An interesting move, not one that's totally unexpected, because we tend to have moves like this every year for some of those top picks.
Yeah.
It just tends to be us doing them.
Exactly.
Other people get involved every year. It's usually like one other person that does it, so not unexpected. But it was fun.
Yeah, and
pretty good trade.
As we alluded to earlier, just kind of with last year's picks, I mentioned to Steve as I was looking over our recent draft picks this year. Coming in as we're about to start the draft here at 104, it's actually our lowest pick that we'd had. And as I mentioned, we're a playoff team each year, so in fantasy and dynasty specifically, you gotta be active with trades. You gotta constantly be refreshing that roster, and we were. We ended up acquiring the 103 in the first rookie draft, 102 and 103 in the second, 101 and 108, I believe it was, in the previous draft, and then as we're coming into this one here, the 104.
Yeah, it was. If I remember correctly, I think it was primarily like Ertz and some pieces for the 103, and maybe like a piece. So that was that first year. That landed us David Montgomery. Then we traded that same draft. I think we traded like the 110 or the 111 for a future first, and that future first turned into the 103. And then that year we traded up to the 102 with like another first we had acquired and the next year's first. So that got us JT and Dobbins. Last year, I think we gave up Chubb and something for the 101. And
yes, it was 101 and 108. Let me
Oh yeah, because we grabbed Lawrence, 108, 109.
Yeah.
Like
yeah, Chubb, our second round pick in this draft we're about to talk about, 2022, and our second round pick in 2023. So we gave up 2 future seconds and Nick Chubb for the 101 and the 108.
Yeah, there you go. And then this year, as we said, we just traded the Mike Evans and the Jacobs and got the 104 plus some other stuff. So
exactly.
A lot of trading.
Yeah, so we have the board kind of set here. There is a few trades I'll highlight as we get to the picks, but all of the pre-draft trades are in place here. And I believe the team here at the 101 actually did have that pick, so it was not a traded pick.
Yes, it was not. And to no one's surprise, it was Breece Hall.
Yeah, and the team I think that has been middle of the pack. This year obviously down with getting the 101, but definitely as we'll see, he I think walks away with 5 different picks. First pick in each round outside the fourth, so he's got some high picks there. Also has some higher picks in the or at least one other decently high pick. I believe maybe he has 3, I think, first round picks. He ends up trading one of them here in a bit, but does get some pretty good value.
Yeah, he does. He had the 101, the 105, and the 106, I believe. Something to that degree, correct? Yes.
Yes. 101, 105, 106, and then obviously a few more picks kind of scattered throughout in the second and third.
Yep, and then our friend who traded for the 102 drafted Drake London. No surprise, he is a Falcons fan.
Yeah,
and he does stuff like this.
Tracks there. I think a lot of people have been seeing either London, Wilson, or Walker. I think Walker's, I would say, probably the most common there, just because of the position scarcity for Kenneth Walker, running back, going to Seattle. But London, Wilson, I think are both guys, and even Williams, I think Burks, a lot of guys that we've seen kind of jump up there. I think London and Wilson were maybe the two that we've seen the most, but Walker I think is the most common. So maybe the first slight, wouldn't say shocker, but slight non-chalk pick, but definitely not a reach, I would say, at all.
No, yeah, definitely not. You just, like you said, you expect the running backs to go. And then one did. Walker went next. I don't think that's a big surprise. The team did need a running back. It's a shame because you look at him and it's like a lot of failed potential. He had Clyde Edwards-Helaire that he drafted with the 101 and it didn't work out. Michael Carter, who's now been replaced, Singletary, not high rookie draft capital for Singletary, but it hasn't really worked out that great. Barkley, he traded for, and, maybe he turns it back around this year, but, obviously a lot of injuries recently. So a pick he needed to make for sure.
Yes. So that brings us to us. I think we were praying for one of those 3. Going into this, my top guy was Garrett Wilson. But as we alluded to earlier, we had Elijah Moore already. So you kind of have that thing in your mind playing out where do you want to double down on the same team, young guys? If you believe in the player, I don't think there's an issue with it. But it is something to consider, right? I think we were hoping London gets there when we saw our friend Bird trade up to 102. I kind of had an assumption that he would be taking him, so that seemed unlikely. And then it was just hoping Gunny liked one of these receivers there, Lance, at the 103, but obviously taking Walker in place of that there. So getting to us, Hall, London, Walker off the board. More really deciding between Wilson, Jameson, Williams, and Burks. I think that was kind of the thought between those 3 right there, right?
Yeah, and with some thought of trying to trade down, which we've done successfully in many other drafts and situations and just couldn't pull together this time around, which was a shame. But yeah, those are the ones that came down to. I think we ruled out Burks earlier on, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
Wilson
a lot of people like him. I was lower on him pre-draft. Obviously, pretty solid landing spot, but I think he was my 5th out of that kind of top 5 receivers pre-draft going in. A lot of people were hype on him, kind of think hoping maybe that someone liked him to trade up to. I think we were talking to the 107, who was the trade team that traded up to 102. We had maybe some traction to move down from 4 to 7, but once he moved up, the new 107 manager didn't seem very interested in moving up. 108, 109, thinking about it, but really just couldn't get anything going there. So we realized either we're going to have to trade out altogether or we're going to make the pick here.
Yeah, and making the pick is what we ended up doing. And we drafted Wilson. I mean, we just said at the end of the day, talent over the situation. And he was the talent. So, yeah, drafted Garrett Wilson. Got 2 Jets. Like you said, historically not the best franchise in the world, and a young quarterback. So I can't see anything going wrong there.
No, yeah. So we'll see. I mean, it's interesting because, like, if you just put like a middling franchise name there, right? Call it like Chargers are good now, but like Chargers, or trying to think of like
Falcons.
Falcons. Like, trying to think of like everyone I'm thinking Bills. Is like really good or really bad, right? Yeah, like Falcons or like Minnesota. Minnesota, right? And you said they have a second year quarterback that showed some promise. They have a second year receiver that really looked good with him. Drafted a top 15 receiver that myself, he was my favorite, Garrett Wilson, coming out, and drafted arguably the number 2 to 3 running back pre-draft. Clearly, that second running back, post-draft. You'd think that that's a team I want to get a piece of, right? Think maybe they can pull a Cincinnati Bengals, right? Team that went from being very bad, drafting some pretty top talent for a few years in a row, and now they're looking obviously like a Super Bowl contender there, as they were, maybe a couple passes away from winning the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah, absolutely. So time will tell.
Yeah, you heard it here first. Bet on the Jets to win the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, absolutely. If only.
Probably get some decent odds.
Yeah, I would say for sure. Next pick, pretty easy. 105. It was Treylon Burks. Nothing to really say about this. This was the owner of the 101 pick as well.
And he currently has 101, 105, and 106. So we're thinking, all right, what is he going to do here? He's going to make the Treylon Burks pick. But then we find out he is talking and looking to either trade down or out for that pick. And he does. He gets a nice little package here for that pick. So for the 106, after he makes the Burks pick, picks up the 205, 304, 306. So 3 picks here for depth in this one, as well as this team's 2023 first-round pick, who traditionally has been outside of the playoffs and has been a pick that you want to pick up. I think one year we traded with this team. They offered us, I think it was like their...
Yeah, that was the one I mentioned earlier.
Second round
traded
pick.
Like the 111 or 110 and got their first the next year that turned it into the 103.
Yes, that's what it was. For some reason I was thinking it was like their second round pick that we got. But regardless, it was it was a very good value that we got out of it. So, another, I think, very good move for this team that has been, building Breece Hall, Treylon Burks, some depth in this draft, and a future first.
Yeah, it was a good move on his part for sure. There's no arguing that. He did pretty good there. And then I don't know if you said that the team he traded with drafted Sky Moore. Did you mention that?
No, I didn't say who he drafted. So this is a team that we said made a few different trades there. Picked up some of those future fourths, and then picked up Robert Woods for a little trade down. So moves back up there and ends up picking Sky Moore. I think one of the biggest risers of all the receivers in this draft. Definitely someone that I kind of had in that second tier, probably in that 6 to 10 range. But there's a top 5 I think for me coming in: Wilson, London, Burks, Jameson Williams, Chris Olave. Sky Moore definitely put himself in that conversation with, good talent and great opportunity in Kansas City.
Yep, and I look back, it was Hollywood Brown that he had traded for us earlier to draft when he wanted our 111 or 110, whatever that was. He drafted Hollywood Brown.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's what it was.
Yeah, so another wide receiver. So yeah, I agree. I don't know. I guess he wasn't in the first, but maybe a reach. But 106, I mean, go get your guy, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
he's probably going to 108, 109, 110.
Yeah, he wasn't going to make it I think he could, the next 3 or 4 picks. I mean, for me, Jameson Wilson and Chris Olave, I could see you arguing Sky Moore over Olave. Olave is kind of the back of that top 5 for me. But I know he, obviously got injured at the end of the season last year, so there's some question marks about him being ready. But for, camp rumors, or I guess not even camp, but it's this mini camp, OTAs we're in now. I've heard rumors where Jameson Williams looks like he's going to be ready for the season. So he was my 102 pretty clearly. And interesting that, he gets passed on here, still there. I think we're at this point salivating. I think this is where we're starting to think, we have Jameson Williams and Chris Olave falling here. And we had some conversations with the 108, 109, 110 about trying to move in or move up to get a pick here. So this is where we're like, all right, a couple of these guys still here. We're messaging. We're trying to work some trades.
Yeah, I think we start with the 107 because eventually we did get kind of itchy. And we had a plan and we didn't want it to fall apart. So we talked to them. That didn't work. He ended up drafting Christian Watson, which opened up everything for us because we were like, okay, it's Williams and Olave. Watson just went, and we're like, okay, so we have 2 opportunities to jump in there and snag this guy. Yeah.
And I think we were, I think the 8 is a friend of ours, Graham, and so we had some pretty open dialogue. He wasn't really looking to move out of that one. Hadn't really heard back from the 109, so we're, I think, more talking to the 110, who also has 112, as well as the 111, who was the 107. He made a pick, so we're like, all right, maybe he'd be willing to trade a second pick. So we're talking a little more actively with those teams.
Yeah, seeing, we knew what he wanted. He was eyeing up Cook.
Mm.
So we were talking through different scenarios and what have you, and what we could do. In the middle of the conversation, I think he wasn't on the clock yet. Our friend, like you said, Graham, went ahead and made his pick, drafted Jameson Williams.
Yeah, really good pick. I think 108 for Jameson Williams.
Yeah, so then, we got a strike. The guy with the 109, we have worked several trades with him in the past. Ertz trade for the 103 for Montgomery that I mentioned was him.
Yeah.
So
didn't respond, all the time, but when he does, if you get some traction, I think like he was like, don't want to trade, and then I think I forget what we were offering, maybe like a second and a player. I don't know. We eventually got to the point where we're going to trade our 2023 first, right? And that's pretty appetizing. But I don't know if we start. I guess we had to start with that, right?
Yeah, I don't even recall where we started. I'm not sure. We got up to we started involving our first for the next year, and
first
then,
and third, I believe it was. Then it was kind of that original offer.
Yeah, and some pieces just started falling around it. So at the end of the day, what we gave up was our 23 first, our 23 third, our 24 second, and then we threw in Jarrett Patterson.
Yeah, had to cut someone anyway.
Yeah, we're gonna cut him. So you just asked, like, do you want this guy?
Yeah,
before we cut
a little
him?
Goodwill.
So, yeah, yep. And then what we got back was the 109, a 23 fourth, and Philip Lindsay as a potential handcuff for JT.
Yeah.
Again, just a guy, like, just throw him in. Like,
yeah, had just signed, I believe, that week too. So
yeah, he's not worth a lot. It's just give him us and we'll call it a deal.
Yeah.
To do that.
So get the 109, and we're pretty thrilled to get another young receiver to add to the stable here with Chris Olave.
Yeah. So we take our shot at Olave, the last of our top guys. I think there's the tier break where then you start getting into Sky Moore and Christian Watson, Pickens, and that kind of tier. Cook. So yeah, we were quite happy with that, I think.
Yeah, and still one more pick there at 311. Thinking, okay, maybe we can trade up with that at some point in the second round, but didn't really have too much more action on our own end that we could really do. Not depleted on future picks. At this stage, we've got a second, third, fourth in 23, and then a first, third, fourth in 24. But don't really have don't have too much to trade when it comes to picks.
Yeah, we were pretty tapped out and not in the way of players either, because you said we were top heavy.
Yeah.
So couldn't do too much. And there nobody else really did too much either. The rest of the first round, there were no trades. The 110 was Cook, the 111 was Pickens, and the 112 was Dotson. I don't think any real surprises there. This is roughly where all three of them go, right? Yeah, so they were easy. And then starting off the second, not a lot either. I believe we did have some conversations in this area.
Yeah, maybe. I think it was the
we
202, 203. I think we were talking about trading down to that at a point, or trading into one of them. It probably would have been, futures or second next year, I think is what it was, because we were expecting it to be that potentially higher second. But just, wanted a little more than that. And Isaiah Spiller, Pierce was another guy I think that we wanted. So when that group went off, it, was pretty clear we weren't going to be able to get one of the guys they were looking at. Tolbert, Alec Pierce, a couple of interesting guys that were still on the board.
Yeah, and around this time, we were also talking about trading a future second for Brandon Cooks.
Yes, I think that's what it was. Before we made the big 109 trade, the idea was, can we get either 202 or 203 and Brandon Cooks for future seconds and players and picks, like a combination. But when we made that 109 trade, realized that the future second wasn't, or these current year seconds weren't going to be able to afford them. But maybe Brandon Cooks. Obviously, we're not able to get that done though.
No, yeah, that fell apart. But next four picks, again, no trades. The people that had them kept them. It was Spiller with the 201, Pierce, Bell, Rachaad White there at the 204. And then we did have a trade.
This is actually part of the bigger trade that we said with the 106.
The 106.
So this is, and this is a team that I think I'm going to highlight a few times here as he makes a couple of trades. This is the 101. So he's got Breece Hall and Treylon Burks, gets Isaiah Spiller at the 201. And on the 106 trade down, gets the 205 to pick up Kenny Pickett. We'll get into Pickett in a minute, but he also picked up the 304 and 306, which he traded those two picks for Russell Gage. So got a depth receiver there to trade those third round picks, and comes away with 2 top 5 first, 2 top 5 seconds with Breece Hall, Treylon Burks, Isaiah Spiller, Kenny Pickett.
Pickett's an interesting one. He has Kyler Murray, and that's really it. I think he has Jordan Love on that roster. So he definitely needs a backup quarterback. Now, we were offering Tannehill for the 301.
Yeah, and that was one that he was interested in, but I think ultimately decided not to. And I think we were talking to him about it even afterward and said, maybe if Kyler goes down, and, I think I'm going to roll the dice on Pickett winning the job to be my, QB2. So, possibly something to move, midseason, but at this point he's kind of rolling with what it's gotten. Some pretty good picks here to reinvigorate the roster here for this team.
Yeah, and it helps that he's had so many picks. Like, he's already grabbed 2 running backs and a wide receiver. It's easier to justify grabbing a quarterback, a backup quarterback for yourself when you've done that. So yeah, he goes there. And then it goes quiet again. Quiet on the trade front. We were still doing some work, but
this is when we're probably thinking about looking to move up from 311. No, it probably wasn't realistic until maybe the end of the second, early third, but this is where we're kind of putting some feelers out.
Yeah, seeing what we could do. Trey McBride went with the 206. Tolbert, Algieri, Dick just still can't pronounce his name. Brian Robinson, Ingram, Davis Price, and then Pierce. That rounds out the second round. That Pierce pick, the 212, that's probably the one we were, I don't know if you'd say closest to getting, but the one we were really hammering on. Just because we got a relationship with that gentleman that owns that pick. We've done quite a few trades with him before. He did not want to draft that many people in this draft. He made it known he was looking to trade his picks, and yeah, it's tough when you're top heavy because you have none of those mid pieces you can move around. A teamless Cole Beasley or a Mike Davis is not going to get you a 212.
Yeah, T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah, exactly. All like the depth shot in the dark pieces, that are more warranting thirds and fourths. It wasn't going to happen. So
Yeah, yeah. So
tried and failed.
there's definitely some trade talks going on. We can tell, players messaging the chat, hey, make the pick in a bit, working on trades, but there actually is not another trade that happens until the end of the third round where we make our final trade. And actually, from what I can tell here, I believe it was the final trade of the draft from there.
Yeah. Not for lack of trying. We did keep trying to get into the third, looking at Zamir White, looking at, maybe taking a shot on Malik Willis. I mean, there were some options up there. So just to run through those real quick, the 301 was Mechie, Robinson,
Wandale Robinson.
White's there.
Yep.
Yeah, Woods,
Jelani
Thornton,
Woods.
Malik Willis finally there at the 306.
Yeah, interesting. Team that pretty good depth at quarterback. I believe his fourth was Kellen Mond. He was holding on to, so end up cutting him for the Willis pick. So kind of just resets the clock there on developmental quarterback. Cutting Kellen Mond, adding Malik Willis done there on your taxi squad.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Same team. Actually, he's got the 304, 306, and 307. Grabs Dubes. I'm assuming it's Dubes, not Dobbs.
Yeah, Romeo Dubes.
Yep.
Kansas City, Green Bay receiver. So Green Bay and Kansas City both take two receivers, I believe. Green Bay specifically there, I think Kansas City got one from John Ross and the Justin Ross in undrafted free agency. Who goes next? But two teams that take a shot on the second guy. Obviously, I think most people think Sky Moore and Christian Watson are going to pan out, but there are definitely times where the top guy doesn't, and the second guy does.
Yeah, 100%. See it all the time. But yeah, like you said, Ross went next. Dolchich went 309.
And we're trying to trade for a second pick here. I think 310 is one that we were working on trying to trade for. I believe it was some type of James White combination for the pick and a later fourth.
Yes, because we had our eyes on trying to grab Pierre Strong and
Ritter, and potentially Khalil Shakir. But I think Ritter and Strong were the two we were looking at there.
Yeah. So we tried, and that's the one. We had a deal, didn't we? And then
this is a co-owner situation where one guy was down for it, moving down, picking up James White, but the co-owner really wanted Matt Corral. I think they didn't pick again until the 402 and 407. Didn't know if he would get there. Maybe thought we were moving up for Corral. Maybe thought someone else was. So just, I think, wanted to take his guy and took their Matt Corral, third quarterback, off the board here.
Yeah. So that brought us to our next pick, which was Pierre Strong, which we mentioned before. And I think it was around this time we made the trade, right?
Yeah, it was right, here, maybe the next pick, but 311 I think is interesting because going into it, that was, I think, obviously going in, we only had 104 and 311, but I was pretty confident we were going to pick, after the 104, but I was pretty confident it wouldn't be a 311. I thought that would be one that we would trade, whether it's up or back or out. So it's pretty interesting that we make that pick. I did not. I really thought that was going to be part of a trade.
Yeah, because we had talked about, we had gotten an offer of moving, I think, Mike Davis for, what was it, the 312 at the time? 310?
Yeah, I think originally it was Mike Davis. We were offered Mike Davis for 310 straight up, and we said, well, maybe we can get a little more for him. It's got a shot to be the second back there with him and Gus. So we offered, I believe it was 311 and Mike Davis for 212. Got denied. Offered it actually Mike Davis straight up for 308. It got denied again as well. So I think we were just kind of at a loss there on him.
Yeah. It just didn't work out. And then around this time we finally did pull the James White deal. We moved James White. We got the 402, the 407. Kind of a risk because if James White, as we were talking quite a bit back and forth, if James White does return to form, that's a good running back depth piece to have. Definitely warranting more than 2 fourth-round picks, but he's not young anymore. the backfield's changed a lot. Tom Brady's gone. They keep adding running backs like crazy. He's coming off the injury. It just seems like a good time to move on. And just
Yeah, I mean, like
not roll the dice on him
our
anymore.
RB depth, we did have like three, I believe, 3 or 4 older guys, but it was just all of those are kind of tickets that are you could easily get a decent relevant year, or it could be done. So I think we were having three of them. We're like, let's at least try to get rid of one just to get some value back, and then hope. I mean, Mark Ingram is one that I think I'm a little more confident in. With the team that drafted him again. Definitely has some goodwill with the team, and then you still have that chance that Kamara's suspended, and you might be able to get some early, value out of Ingram. Maybe even get some trade value back for him.
Yeah, 100%. So we pulled that trade off. Hassan Haskins goes with the 312. And then the 401 was Desmond Ritter, who we, again, were aiming for. And I think maybe talked about trying to get that pick. And we couldn't get a pick done.
Yeah, talk to him about moving up or like just getting the pick in general. But I think there's other teams looking to move up too, but just didn't end up happening.
Yep. So then we come up with the 402. We draft Khalil Shakir, which I think we were surprised made it to us. It's of all the dart throws, that's a pretty good one. Some vacancy there in the wide receiver group. Good offense, good quarterback.
There were a few guys here that I think were like projected in like that early mid third. Khalil Shakir, one of them. Ritter, another one that we were like, all right, wouldn't be bad to get them there. And we're picking up 2 4th-round picks. Pretty happy to see some good value there. So Shakir there at 402, I think is pretty good. I think he's a guy that maybe, if you get anything out of him in 2022, you're thrilled. But I think, he's behind Crowder and Gabe Davis for like that 2-3 potential. Obviously, Diggs is the top guy. But you're pretty confident in the offense going forward with Allen. So I think, maybe he shows that he can be the slot number 3 and they move on from Crowder after this year. So he's definitely a guy that I like as a developmental guy for the next year or two.
Yeah, absolutely. Danny Gray goes right after that. And then Kyron Williams, somebody that we had been targeting and it was hoping was going to slip through to either the 407 or, maybe we're going to roll the dice to see if he got the free agency or not, or if we could, make a trade to grab him up. But he goes there at the 404. Jerome Ford goes. We do have a regular player, Marcus Mariota, gets drafted. We do allow free agents to get drafted.
Yeah. And it's interesting because like the 4th-round picks have a little bit more value there because the way it works is you don't have to cut players until you are at your max roster. So there are going to be players cut throughout the draft that weren't available in the 1st round that are available in the 4th round because they were cut, throughout the draft here. So it's interesting the way that it works that you actually have more free agents available as you get into that 3rd, 4th round.
Yeah, and it makes somebody like Mariota valuable. Grab the starting depth quarterback. We could have used that, really. We've done in the past, I think we grabbed Jason Witten one year in the late 4th when we needed, when we had I think it was the 2nd year before Andrews had really broken out. We're like, we'll get him as an insurance policy. And that worked out well. But then we got up 407, had some back and forth, but ended up going with Calvin Austin, wide receiver out of
Pittsburgh. Yeah. So
Pittsburgh.
One guy that I liked coming in pre-draft as well, it kind of ends as that like wide receiver, 10 to 15-ish. And, I think he got good landing spot in draft capital with the 4th-round pick in Pittsburgh. They've been able to draft receivers and develop them, but obviously as the 2nd receiver there behind Pickens, Pickens, I think, is a very good talent, but I think there is opportunity there. He's some potential character issues with Pickens. He's had some injury concern, but he's a guy I think, if he hits, he is going to be a stud. Pittsburgh has been proven as a team that, they're not going to overpay their players. So they're more than willing to let you walk because they know they can draft and develop players. So I think Calvin Austin's an interesting shot there. Is another depth receiver that, once again, here in a year or two, you may see him stepping into that wide receiver 2 or 3 role because Claypool walks, because Deontay Johnson walks.
Yeah, 100%. It's a good gamble to take with the 407. They're all dart throws, so you pick a team that's good at cultivating the position. And then rounding out the draft, it was Snoop Connor, Velus Jones, Tyler Batty, the one that we had looked at, Ty Chandler, and Kyle Phillips.
Yeah, so that wraps up the draft there. Here I can kind of recount what the team looks like now after the draft, right? So we wanted to get younger, wanted to get a more solidified quarterback. So it kind of puts us in a situation where we can definitely contend this year, but with having those young receivers, you could also look to kind of make a little mini retool. Maybe this next offseason, you consider moving Taylor or Harris for a slew of picks and get some young running backs. You could look into moving a Tyreek Hill even, or Keenan Allen, Mark Andrews, some of these guys, and you've already got some young receivers in tow to kind of be a step ahead on your potential rebuild. So definitely got some flexibility here. I'll run down the roster, but anything else you want to say there about the draft itself or kind of the strategy, where we're at now, what we're thinking?
No, I think we covered it. We had some tough cut conversations to a degree. Like T.Y. Hilton was easy. But then it comes down to, do you want to cut
Hunter
Cole
Freeman
Beasley
was
or,
one,
or see
yeah.
if he finds a team? Amari Rogers, is he someone you just cut now, or do you hang on for a few games to see if, maybe he's a guy that starts taking over in Green Bay, and Darrington Evans, and who can you trade and maybe get a future fourth instead of cutting and stuff like that. Stuff that, doesn't make for good podcast talk really, because no one cares about these guys. It's something you should be doing, trying to maximize value anywhere you can.
Exactly. So I'll run down the roster quick. Quarterbacks and tight ends remain the same here from pre-draft. Quarterbacks, Brady, Trevor Lawrence, Ryan Tannehill, Baker Mayfield. Tight ends, Mark Andrews, Adam Troutman, Dan Arnold, and Brevin Jordan. But really where we kind of made some hay here, running backs, Jonathan Taylor, Najee Harris. Still got Mark Ingram and Mike Davis as some depth pieces there. Philip Lindsay, handcuff. Pierre Strong was the running back we added in the draft, and then still have Darrington Evans on the taxi squad there. The receivers, Tyreek Hill and Keenan Allen, kind of with that bridge of Jarvis Landry, and then Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Josh Palmer still, Amari Rogers, and then two more depth guys with Khalil Shakir and Calvin Austin. And then Cole Beasley for now on the roster, probably the first cut candidate if we do make any post-draft ads, but he is, I think, kind of tentatively on the roster, I'd say.
Yeah, him and Darrington Evans are top options.
Yeah. So
it's a shame you run into these Cole Beasley types. He's probably talked himself out of a job, given all the anti-vax stuff. I'm assuming that's why he's not on a team. I really don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of how what were his numbers? Did he? I know he was relevant here and there, but overall, I'm trying to think of his season numbers. If he was, because it don't matter, what your stances are unless it's crazy. If he was producing, he's going to be on a team, right? The NFL overlooks most things, unfortunately.
Last year wasn't his best year. The year prior to that and the year prior to that, I think he was good. But last year,
I think Gabe Davis probably stepped up and hurt him a bit last year, right?
Yeah, and I think there's some injuries maybe that he had last year. I don't quite recall. But whatever. Yeah, at the end of the day, he's probably done. Like you said, he'll be a prime cut candidate unless someone wants him and we can move him. We have had some interest. Darrington Evans, probably the other one. We'll see. After that, it starts getting more difficult. And we'll see. I mean, Josh Palmer, not bad. Brevin Jordan, not bad. I mean, there's other options there, but you could make a case for them a little bit more easily than a Darrington Evans at this point.
Yeah, and that's really where we're looking, right? If we have guys that we think, for our roster don't make sense, but are guys that maybe other teams, whether it's a handcuff, whether it's just a depth receiver you want to take a shot on, you think is another team that may want to take a shot on him, see if anybody is willing to, give you that late pick in the future for him, because not only are you getting the value back, but you're, able to make that cut that you had to make anyway, right? So it's an interesting thought process there, behind it. Obviously, you're not, going to try to trade a guy that's out of the league for a few years that you've been hanging on to. But if it's a player that, still has an opportunity, you might be able, a team may be interested in taking a shot on him for, a future late pick.
Yep, 100%. 100%. So, yeah, I think, well, that about wraps up the draft episode there. Do you have any closing thoughts? Anything else you want to touch on here?
No, we got to figure out what we're gonna do now until draft season, Steve. I guess we're gonna have to do some of those mock drafts we always talk about.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to get on point with that and just start knocking them out.
Yes, sir.
Cool. Well, and till next time, folks, have a good day and trust your board.